All right, today we're diving into a really controversial playbook on modern dating. Now, this thing is written from a very traditional, very male point of view, and it claims to hold the secrets to a lasting relationship. But just a heads up, the advice in here is, well, it's pretty out there.
So the whole thing kicks out by asking a question that a lot of people are probably asking themselves. Why is dating today so incredibly confusing? The author paints this picture of it being a total maze, full of dead ends and signals that make no sense. And right on cue, he presents his book as the answer. He calls it a roadmap, a direct and, an extremely polarizing one that'll take you straight to the finish line, a committed, long-term relationship. So what's the big idea here? What's the premise? Well, the whole argument is built on what the author calls a massive communication breakdown. He argues that for the last, 50 years, our culture has been so focused on what women want that what men actually need to commit has been totally ignored. Or even worse, just dismissed as not being important. And that idea leads us directly to the absolute cornerstone of his entire argument. It's a really controversial concept he introduces called a woman's intrinsic value, and he ties it directly to her past. Okay, so what in the world is this intrinsic value? Well, according to him, it has absolutely nothing to do with your personality, your career, your achievements, none of that. He defines it as how a man measures a woman's capacity for loyalty. And the number one indicator for that, in his view, her sexual history. And listen, the author does not mince words on this. This quote is straight from the book, and it draws this incredibly hard line, basically splitting all women into two camps based entirely on this one idea. So, how does he possibly justify this? Well, the logic he lays out is that a woman forms this unique and permanent bond with her very first sexual partner. So in his world, that means only a virgin can give her husband complete, undivided loyalty. Any guy after that, he only gets a piece of it. And to really hammer this home, he creates this fictional character named Linda, who serves as a cautionary tale all throughout the book. This whole concept of value then flows right into the author's ideas about gender roles. He argues for a super specific power dynamic that he claims is not just helpful but absolutely essential for a relationship to actually last. The core idea he pushes is that this is all about biology, about instinct. He says women are just hardwired to be attracted to men they see as superior, while men are driven to lead and protect. So what does this look like in real life? The man has to be the leader, plain and simple. And the advice for women is to avoid confrontation. If she disagrees, she should use what he calls her feminine art of persuasion instead of actually trying to take charge. Okay, so once you've got those power dynamics set up, how do you keep this spark alive for the long haul? How does a wife in this very traditional role keep her husband interested for decades? This quote pretty much sums up his entire philosophy on it. He makes the case that long-term attraction isn't something you just get and then you're done. No, he sees it as a marathon of constant, continuous effort. So what's the strategy? The main goal is to never, ever be predictable. He tells women to reveal new sides of themselves, but slowly, over a long period of time. This creates this really stark duality. In public, you should be reserved, the kind of woman who is pursued. But behind closed doors, you should be completely uninhibited, ready to fulfill all of his desires. The logic here is that if a man is totally satisfied at home, he won't go looking for it anywhere else. Now what about just the day-to-day stuff, the partnership? For the author, it all comes down to managing expectations. He claims that what a man truly wants in a wife is incredibly simple, just 4 basic traits. And he contrasts that with what he says women want, this gigantic, complicated, often contradictory laundry list of traits that, in his opinion, basically guarantees they'll be disappointed. To make his point about not seeking perfection, he uses this really vivid analogy of a husband's shopping center. Imagine this. On each floor, the men supposedly get better and better, but women who are always looking for the next best thing on the floor above end up passing on perfectly good options right in front of them. Eventually, they get to the top floor, they've passed everyone up, and guess what? There's nothing left. His point is pretty blunt. If you're always searching for perfection, you could end up with nothing at all. So after all this advice, all these rules and analogies, what's the final takeaway? Well, it all circles back to what he sees as the consequences of a woman's choices, especially the ones she makes when she's young. And his conclusion is about as blunt as it gets. He basically argues that by the time a woman decides she's finally ready to settle down, she has already spent her most valuable asset for the marriage market, which, of course, is what he calls her intrinsic value, her capacity for total loyalty. And that's pretty much where he leaves you. The entire book funnels down to this single, final, and yeah, extremely provocative question for the reader. He frames your entire dating life as a fundamental choice between two totally different paths and two totally different identities. It's a really stark ending, and it's definitely designed to make you stop and think about everything he's just said.